we have Case Malawi. We are happy to have him. We have Mr. Moses also from Ministry of Finance. So I think it would be good if we start now, Lucia. Thank you.
All right, no, that's fine. So we're at 10:05 as promised, that we can now kick off. So good morning once again to all of you, our representatives bank. Thank you all for joining us this morning for this webinar that you've been invited to. This morning, the webinar provides a platform to share lessons, provide a forum for discussions with the Government of Malawi, represented by different ministries and departments, to share on the impact evaluation of irrigation schemes in Malawi, and also to inform future project design. So for our program this morning, there will be 3 presentations from the bank departments, including the Malawi country office. And I think it's appropriate now, we can kick off with our program. Our officials are already logged in and ready and waiting. So to kick us off for this program, we would like to invite our representatives who will be giving us our opening remarks. So we will start by inviting the Malawi Country Office Acting Country Manager, Ms. Fasika. So welcome, Ms. Fasika, if you will, you have the floor in terms of giving us opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Lucia. Good morning again to everyone. Very warm welcome to this morning webinar meeting. I would like to again recognize Mr. Moses Chirewa, Deputy Director of Data and Aid Department at the Ministry of Finance. We also to have Mr. Sandra Maweru, PS for Irrigation. We're happy to have you here. We're happy to have all government officials connected in this webinar, and also for my colleagues from the Malawi Country Office, from Abidjan, or from other bank offices in the region. So the purpose of this morning's session is to share with you the findings, conclusions, and lessons and recommendations of the impact evaluation of the African Development Bank support to 2 irrigation infrastructure development projects in Malawi. The evaluated projects were 2. The first one is the smallholder crop production and marketing project, which was completed in 2014 and amounted about $20 million US. The other evaluated project was the Agriculture Infrastructure Services project. This project was completed in 2017 and also amounted about $20 million US. So the purpose of the impact evaluation was to generate lessons and provide recommendation to maximize the impacts of our ongoing operations and future irrigation development interventions in the bank, on projects that are financed by the bank, by government, or by other development partners. So the key objectives were, number 1, to estimate the impact of the bank-supported irrigation development interventions on key intermediate outcomes, such as the yield, diversification, and crop intensity. And also to look at, in terms of the final outcomes, what happened, to poverty reduction, to food security, and health and child nutrition. So the other objective was also to identify explanatory factors that affect the development outcomes of these projects. And also the evaluation aim was to generate lessons and provide recommendations for improving the impact of, as I said, the current and future intervention. So the overarching evaluation question was, what are the differences made by the bank-supported irrigation-related projects in the country? And this evaluation was conducted, I think it started at the beginning of 2019. And the mission was led by Mr. Girma Kumbi, who's the Chief Evaluation Officer, who will be, sharing with us the evaluation findings in a minute. This evaluation would not have been successful without the kind support of the Government of Malawi. So let me take this opportunity to thank especially the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Agriculture, Irrigation and Water Development, now the Ministry of Forestry and Natural Resources, for your kind support that you've provided to the mission that has made it deliver this output. We also like to thank the development partners, who made themselves available for consultation during the evaluation period. So let me stop here and thank you very much again for taking part in this knowledge sharing session. Over to you, Lucia.
All right, thank you very much to the Acting Country Manager for the African Development Bank, Malawi Country Office. Allow me to then invite our representatives from the Ministry of Finance to give us opening remarks, represented by the
All right. Good morning. Thank you so much. I recall that we had a mission. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. Just experienced a small glitch today. Had to switch over to another gadget. As I was saying, thank you to the Acting Country Manager from the African Development Bank, Malawi Country Office. So at this juncture, I would like to invite our representative from the Ministry of Finance, represented by the Deputy Director of Debt and Aid, Mr. Chirwa. Over to you, Mr. Chirwa.
Yes, thank you so much. I recall we had a mission some time back on this irrigation, and as we're all aware that the issue about climate change is affecting the Malawi. So I think irrigation is very important. I recall that we've had several projects on irrigation. It's been a mixed bag, but there have been some successes and some challenges. But I think going forward, we need to look into this issue of irrigation. It is important because we can't rely on rain-fed agriculture. So with our support from our development partners and the African Development Bank, we will look forward to engaging with each other so that we can look more deeply into this issue, because we can't rely on rain-fed agriculture for the going forward. So I thank the bank for filling this mission, and we look forward to our continued partnership. At this point, I think I don't have more remarks, but I thank you, and we look forward for more cooperation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chirwa. I think at this point, it's clear that relying on rain-fed agriculture will be a thing of the past. So let us learn in terms of so let us take lesson from what can work based on what we've done in the past. And to allow us to do this, we will have the first presentation from the evaluation team. And to help us do this is Mr. Girma Kumbi. Over to you, Mr. Kumbi, to share with us a snapshot into the findings.
Good morning, distinguished representatives, colleagues, and ladies and gentlemen. My name is Girma Kumbi, and I'm working in the evaluation department in the bank. Thank you very much for this opportunity to present the main findings that the bank did on the impact of small-scale irrigation project in Malawi. And I would like to again thank the government officials who support us a lot during the implementation of this evaluation. Jerusalem has clearly presented the objectives, the purpose of these evaluations. I will briefly make my presentation around, let me see, my slide is, yeah, now it's moving. So just a brief summary on what was the project, what were the characteristics of the project we evaluated, and specific methodology we used for this purpose. And I would like to stress particularly the presentation on what are the key findings and the key lessons that we generate from this evaluation, and we take forward for further improving or filling the gap. Yeah, before starting the presentation, I'd like to say that this evaluation is really get a critical input from the Malawi institution. We did this evaluation in collaboration with the University of Malawi, Social Research Center, and the senior researchers in the country. Let me start with the first part of the presentation. Yeah, I think this is not new to you. I just want to make, for the sake of the presentation, in terms of, to say that these are two projects that we evaluated. So the focus of the impact evaluation is on these two projects, small-scale crop production and marketing, which was completed in 2014. And the second one is Agricultural Infrastructure Support Project. It was completed in 2017. And both projects has common objective, particularly in terms of increasing agricultural productivity and increasing farmers' income, and as well as, of course, at the end, increase food insecurity. So first, we have to increase agricultural productivity and the income in order to achieve food security or poverty reduction and other higher level, outcome. So the nature of the intervention were particularly focusing on three. One, building irrigation infrastructure. Second is working on the marketing area in terms of infrastructure, building market shed and storage facilities. And the third is the training to the farmers and associations and building the capacities around individual farmer, as well as the institutions such as water user associations. And most of these projects, as you know, covered almost across Malawi. So it's really geographically, they are wide. So yes, this is a small presentation on the key features. In terms of methodology, this evaluation based on a really large survey, which involved 1,800 households. And the household survey is also complemented with the deep focus group discussion and key informant interviews there. So the focus group discussion, particularly with farmer association and water user association, and the key informant interviews with the officials and at center, as well as at the local government levels. In terms of the survey, we covered both project area as well as non-project area, because that's where we can compare the two. But in this process, we have to establish proper comparison group. As much as possible, we have to find the communities that have similar characteristics with communities who have been benefited from the irrigation schemes. So for this purpose, we got the comparison group, which I would like to stress is is from the Irrigation Master Plan, which was developed in 2015 by the Malawi government. This study was highly useful for us, really, in order to identify potential irrigable schemes, and we involve the communities or the farmers around this potential scheme. Then we compare that with the farmers who use the irrigation scheme from the African Development Support. So overall, we interviewed 900 households from the beneficiary of the ADB project, as well as 900 from a non-beneficiary, which does not have still, the irrigation scheme. But in the future, there is a potential because that's identified by the Irrigation Master Plan. So it's really based on large scale. And overall, in this study, as a limitation, we only estimated the average impact of all the intervention, the irrigation, capacity building, and the marketing. We able to see only the average impact of all these three components because of the methodological limitation. Normally, if we integrate the evaluation at when the project started, we would have solved those issues. But since we did the evaluation at the end of the project, so we have to look at the methodological, it is challenging to separate the impact of different components. Now we'll go to the next the point of presentation, which is what we found in this evaluation. That's as Jerusalem and Mr. Chirwa mentioned, we looked at basically impact level, outcome level, what we have achieved. This one, first we have to look at the intermediate outcome level, because first we have to achieve intermediate outcomes, then after that we're able to achieve final one. For example, first we have to check whether productivity was increased before seeing where the impact on food security or the impact on poverty and so on. So for this, we checked as an intermediate outcome, agricultural productivity in terms of maize yield and farm crop income from revenue as well as total crop income. As well, we looked at also whether crop diversity increased or whether crop intensity increased. These are the four intermediate outcome we looked at it before. So based on our finding, the evaluation showed that there is an increase in agricultural productivity, particularly for maize yield by around 36%. And there is an increase also for crop income in general for the farmers. Like maize revenue increased by around 103%, and total crop, here when we say total crop, we brought all the revenues from different crops of the farmer, produced by the farmer, and we see that the total crop income increased significantly, of course. So it's very interesting find to stress. The other thing is, as you all know, the result also shows income. Farmers who grow vegetable get better income than compared to the staple food maize crop. So this is, I think, well established fast, as all you know. So in this finding also we found that. Other interesting finding also is with the crop diversification, and also the study shows there is a significant impact of irrigation scheme in terms of the number of crop grown by the farmer. So the farmer increased the number of crops they are growing due to the availability of the irrigation. So one area that we see as, where we couldn't find any evidence actually is the crop intensity. So in our study, we didn't see any sort of increase in crop intensity on average. This is on average, it's not scheme by scheme. It may differ by scheme, but on average, based on our methodology, the crop intensity has not increased, which later on I will explain the reason why, basically, because this is the area where we identify why the things did not work. So, okay, now we check the intermediate outcome. So let's see what it looks like with the final outcome. Final outcome, we again looked at 4 indicators. The first one is food security, which was in the objective of the project. Again, the poverty level. And we added also other 2 important variables like child nutrition, as well as the health of household overall, as addition to see further, those to dig into more impact. So based on our finding, there is significant impact of irrigation project in terms of achieving food security as well as reducing poverty. So the evidences we collected indicated on average this, but we didn't find any evidence to support that the irrigation scheme has impact on child nutrition. Well, child nutrition is of course a bit complicated. It's not only producing agriculture or increasing food diversity, but it involves of course maternal education, breastfeeding, and so different other systems that should be in place to have that. The final indicator we looked at is the house. We checked the health of the household. Here we found that it is a small impact, but there is a 1% increase in the household who used the irrigation scheme in terms of the health of the situation, because this might be due to the irrigation scheme come with the environmental issue in terms of malaria development in the areas and so on, particularly at early stage of the irrigation development. But again, the impact is not large, but it's small. But again, this finding help us to be cautious about future development of any irrigation to figure into those health aspects. So now we have seen that really the irrigation scheme has very positive impact overall in terms of agricultural productivity, income of the farmer, and in terms of finally ensuring the food security as well as reducing poverty. Now, we tried to also disaggregate this finding by key social variables, particularly gender, landhold size, and education of the farm households. So interesting in terms of gender, we found a very interesting result, which is that female-headed households, they improve poverty or improve welfare of the household compared to male-headed household. As you know, this is maybe due to male household, female-headed households give priority to spend what they earn on the welfare of the household. But on contrary, male-headed households, they earn more income in terms from the irrigation schemes, but they did not spend much on welfare or poverty reduction. This is what the result showed us in these aspects. Land household, as it's a very important policy variable, and also in most of Africa, it is very the land is very fragmented due to population size and so on. So the small households are almost all, but here we just categorize in order to show how the impact differ by a different level of land size. So we categorize like households less than 0.6 hectare as small, from 0.6 to 1.2 as mediums, and above 1.2 as a large farm. So still overall there is a small farmer, but we try to see relativity. based on that, what we found is that the relatively small holder, which has less than 0.6 hectare, the increase in productivity is higher because the land is small. So when they get irrigation and the training, it's really high increase for them. The problem is when it goes to the impact at fine, for example, impact on food security and poverty is small compared to households which has large size, because so this, even though the impact is higher due to land size, they couldn't have an impact on their poverty level or on food security level. The last variable we found by disaggregating the impact is education. Yeah, this one is clear. As you know, education is very important. We found really the common established fact, which is education has an impact for those households who have better education are very receptive to technology, and so they improved their productivity, and impact on food security is better. Good. So now, okay, we found positive impact and some areas that we should improve. But finally, the impact we found, are they sustainable? That's another question we asked, and particularly the focus group discussion with the beneficiaries, with officials, in key informant interview identified for as the key areas that really reduces the sustainability of the impact we achieved in these projects. The first factor, which is as a risk factor, is the organizational capacity of the farm household is very, very important, particularly at local level. The second point is the design of irrigation schemes. We found some very poor design, which really reduces it to maximize the impact. Market is very important factor. And again, the motivation of the society, the farmers to involve in farming activities are very, very important. So these are really the areas that reduces the impact. So at the end, after all this evaluation, after all these efforts, we have to reduce what are the lessons that we take forward to improve future similar irrigation projects. That's really very, very important for us to see. So we identified 5 lessons that can be very, very useful. The first one is capacity and the governance system of the local institution. As you know, particularly in irrigation, the water user associations are the primary beneficiary, as well as they are the one who take care of these schemes to ensure sustainability or maximize the outcome. So the organizational capacity as well as the leadership skill of these institutions are very, very important for the proper functioning of the irrigation scheme, as you know. The other, particularly in terms of having the legal status, achieving legal status of for this association is very important. Not only having training on the farming practice, but also in terms of managing their financial system, the fees they collect from the member. All these are important in terms of really financing the maintenance and other expenses arise from dealing with irrigation are very, very key. And the capacity of the local government institution who are working closer to these associations, like district level capacities, also we found is very important in terms of staffing, budgeting to properly support the associations or irrigation scheme are really key. The second lesson is about market. As you know, the farmers are very interested, very eager when we put irrigation scheme in place. They expect there is a market in place. At the end, if I produce enough, and then if I can't get a market, it becomes a disincentive for me to produce similar amount next year, because the expectation is that if I produce more, I earn more. Sorry. So for us, building market infrastructure alone is not sufficient condition to achieve the markets. There are more about creating proper value chain development properly. So due to lack of this market, I think that's why we didn't see much in increasing crop products intensity, as well as loss of interest for the farmer to engage in the farming activity. So we have to work more on the area of developing proper marketing for the farmers. The third point is the technical quality of construction of the irrigation scheme. And we found a quite number of irrigations which are not properly working due to just faulty design. So as a result, the farmer may underutilize the scheme. So it can not produce 3 times or 2 times per year. So it reduces also the crop intensity of the farming activity. As a result, it will affect agricultural productivity. There are examples of those irrigation scheme. For example, one is in Blantyre and Malambe, where the irrigation is really very exemplary. They produce, the members are very happy. They want to produce more. They have market, everything. Even they can sell towards to Lilongwe market, to Zomba. But that irrigation scheme has some minor fault which can be adjusted and can develop more land, based on the original plan. So if we fix those things, even they could have produced more. So these are the areas to really further, increase the impact. The fourth point is very, again, important, social factor, the importance of empowering women in irrigation farming. As our funding shows, female-headed households are really investing much in spending in improving the welfare of the household, in terms of poverty reduction, playing there. But the total income is mainly goes to male-headed households where they, generate, but did not spend much on the household. So it's important that in irrigation development, women should be more, incentivized with access to land and finance for purchase of input and so on. Not only participating in the training and so on. So it's more about empowering in terms of access to assets and finance, which is very important. The last lesson is about improvement in child nutrition. As I said, this was not actually the objective of the project, but at the end, we want to achieve child nutrition in all household level. So our evaluation shows that even though we have improved food security and the food diversity is there, it didn't lead to for children. So this is also important factor. There are other factors that can affect child nutrition, as I mentioned, about the mother's education, about breastfeed, because child nutrition, we measure the impact of the children from 6 months to 59 months old. So I think we have to, when we design irrigation, we have to take into other complementary intervention. Thank you very much for this. Now my colleague Vinda from Malawi Country Office and Chuma from the Agriculture Department will give you more how to take forward these recommendation lessons and other recommendation we provided in this lesson. Back to you, Lucia. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much, Germa. There we are in terms of enhancing agricultural productivity and income. through irrigation schemes. However, we also note that the gender factors as regards income, welfare, and productivity. Many lessons to learn from there, and we'll delve more into the details of some of these projects, some of these lessons, and major takeaways with the next presentation. So allow me to invite our next presenter, Vinda Kisombe from the Malawi country office, who will share as regards what have we done, what are we actually doing in terms of some of our projects, and what do we plan to do, picking up on the lessons from this impact evaluation. So we invite you, Vinda, to take us through the next presentation. If we can keep it to 15 minutes so that we will have enough time to have discussions and engagements. Thank you. You can put it on full slide show.
Oh, okay. Hello?
Yes, Vinda. Oh, yes, that's much clearer. Thank you.
Yeah.
Over to you, Vinda.
Okay, thanks very much. Carrying forward, colleagues, is to answer the question, how do we go about it? We have now learned the findings from the study and also the lessons learned. Taking forward, I'll just briefly discuss, remind each other on the support from the bank, the agriculture sector, then the learning from the IDEV evaluation for future operations, recommendations and actions, and then a little bit discussion on the previous and the future programming for the bank projects and conclusion. On the bank support, I will not dwell very much, but just to emphasize that the cumulative commitments to date, we're talking of 268 million units of accounts, and the programs are aligned to the country strategy paper, which is jointly developed between the bank and the government. So in terms of dollars, we're talking about 375 million US dollars, covering 118 operations. Just for the agriculture sector. We also recognize the bank's priorities on agriculture commercialization and value addition, jobs creation, women and youth empowerment, and the bank has been addressing some of these through the various interventions which I've summarized below there. These are the projects which we all know. Then learning from this evaluation, I think we noted that there are several weak points that we need to improve as we move on. I think we held there is also the lack of extension services, poor governance, the land conflicts resulted into low or non-utilization of irrigation facilities, lack of ownership and effective leadership of irrigation schemes by farmers, and then of course, weak organization and the inadequate capacity. You will notice that a good number of these weak points have been raised by Gilma in his presentation. If you may note one or two that have not been raised, but they are quite in the report, and this is why they are featuring here. So we are doing some, the beautiful thing about this is that the findings from this study, in most cases, they coincide with the findings from our project completion reports of the two projects and even the previous ones. So these have also informed our current projects. As I indicate here, the current projects we have now provided resources to outsource some extension services A very good case is a CVAP, where I think we all know the story, how happy the farmers were with the support we got from, with this, the CVAP, with the support we got from Umozi Consulting Film, for example. And then the other issue is if we look at the Shire Valley Transformation Program, it took a long time to detail the issues, to address issues, socioeconomic and technical design issues through several consultancies, with each assigned to address a specific item. And this was meant actually to improve on some of these weaknesses which have been identified here. In terms of the Water Use Association, we also have the issue of the professional service contractor, which will be engaged for Shire Valley Transformation Program. But where we don't have such an arrangement, we still need to reconsider how we constitute our Water Users Association to be effective and also provide sustainable support to the project. Of course, in the report, we also have an issue of the conflict among beneficiaries in the scheme and water resource management. Well, here I'm looking about the upstream and downstream issue. A good example is IAP, where we actually had to secure funding from EU just to address the upland part of the catchment, which eventually affect the water availability downstream for irrigation. We feel this is a model that should also continue as we consider future programming in the sector. Well, there was a statement that building market infrastructure is not sufficient condition to create markets for farmers. I think this is the point which was presented by my colleague. But project designs lack strategies for linkages of the actors along the value chain, resulting into under or non-utilization of the market structures. You see the two beautiful pictures there. It's a very sad story. They look beautiful as you see them there, but the story behind them is very sad. I'm saying it's sad because they are not being utilized as intended. The one above there in Nsanje, it has been changed to fish market. Maybe better because fish is also an agricultural product. But the one below there is a market depot, beautifully constructed, but there's no activity going on there. So we looking at what should we do with some improvements we have tried to put in place. We have the example in CVAP, we introduced the value chain value addition centers. I think if these are well utilized, they will create market and for both production as well as for the consumers. And then we have the ICT platform, electronic, which is meant to link producers and buyers. And this is also one way of enhancing the accessibility of the farmers. But the question still around that is, how are we carrying it forward after CVAP closure? I think these are the issues which we should be at the back of our mind. Because I already learned that, for example, the CVAP, one VAT is already not functional for a simple reason of just a conflict, I think, between the irrigation and the agriculture. You ask agriculture, they say, no, it's not ours. It's the responsibility of irrigation. You ask irrigation, no, it is agriculture. And we don't know. They just connectivity of electricity is an issue. Just to give an example. Use of skilled markets structures in some VACs. Here is to say some of the structures constructed under SKIP were taken up under CVAP, and I think that is one of the way to go if we are going to address some of these issues in the audit previously financed project. Under IAP, a new phenomenon has been introduced. This thing is establishing a risk-sharing facility with the purpose of enhancing access to finance, which eventually would lead also to improve the access to markets. Then we have the enable youth component. I think this is an issue to address the challenge relating to the youth, but also to engage the youth in the agricultural activities, make agriculture more attractive for the youth, And we are also looking at the facilities such as modern equipment, use of tractors, use of agro-processing equipment, so that the youth can be attracted and participate in the agricultural activities. Shire Valley is to establish small order-owned commercial farm enterprises and linked to farmers. These are a departure from the small water user associations or cooperatives. These are big owned commercial farm enterprises owning not less than 500 hectares per SOCFE, up to possibly 1,000 hectares. I think that's the approach to be considering as we move forward. Then there is an issue of construction designs of schemes. My colleague also mentioned the issue of technical defects that needed to be rectified, the poor command of canals, conveyance canals, flood damages, and then effects of climate change and environmental degradation on the poor choice of technologies. I think these are some of the gaps or the weaknesses noted, and in terms of improving, you will see that when it comes to CVAP, we did an elaborate consultation of stakeholders at this proposal stage, preparation and appraisal, and this type of preparation was able to come up with a proper design, which possibly takes into account the lessons which we have noted there. Although we still had some issues to do with design issues here and there, but the major one was the climate change, which destroyed much of the schemes through Cyclone Idai. Shire Valley transformation also, we are talking of the pre-feasibility studies which were carried out to review previous designs, and this was financed by the bank, and detailed feasibility on socio-economic and engineering studies which were carried out by international consultants to address the weaknesses of the previous studies. This project has not yet taken off, but it is our expectation that it will deliver possibly better than the others. I think down there is what are the main reasons for this irrigation, and we need to address. We need to think about that. Then we come to social factors accompanying the project: lack of nutrition and food utilization. I think my colleague mentioned on this one, we are actually engaging a consultant who will be coming around to actually investigate further on the nutrition issue and come up with appropriate accompanying measures that can help us realize better outcomes and outputs related to nutrition, and also address the health hazards which have been noted to be negatively affecting the irrigation projects. Yeah, lack of knowledge on the conducive environment created by irrigation infrastructure for waterborne sector diseases such as malaria has resulted into negative effects on the health of the population. I think this is another issue that we have to consider coming into the future operation on how do we address the health effects related to water that is distributed through irrigation. Then the gender disparities, which have been ably discussed by my colleague. On this one, the new operations will be designed using the gender marker system to enhance gender mainstreaming in the projects. On this system, we classify the projects based on how many outputs are capturing gender issues or how many outcomes are capturing gender issues, and they can be categorized into categories 1, 2, or 3. Then to address the land challenges, the bank continues to support capacity building on legal and property rights. Shire Valley is piloting implementation of the Land Acts of 2016, support land consolidation and legal rights for cooperatives, and this is the case of the Shire Valley transformation, and we expect mainstreaming land governance issues in all the future programming operations. Some of the recommendations which we took from the study, one is to continue training of the OAs for the ongoing projects in the best agronomic practices, operation and the maintenance, financial management, water and legal rights. and we have given ourselves the target as you read there. Then the other one is ensure the institutional capacity building of the Ministry of Lands, customized district land registries and civic education and awareness embodied in future operations. We hope the new operation, if we have any new operation in the agriculture, these are the issues we have to look into so that we address these challenges noted from the previous projects. Again, Malawi Country Office will finalize the land policy brief that will analyze Malawi's land tenure system, the existing bottlenecks, and how they affect agricultural productivity. That's the Department of Agriculture, the whole agriculture in the bank, will identify different financing options for implementation based on the recommendation actions from the land policy brief. On enhancing agricultural market access, I've already highlighted some of them. Facilitate the establishment of the risk sharing facility, and is quite at an advanced stage under IDEV. Advise government to utilize the market depot constructed under ASP, maybe by extension also, or other unutilized market infrastructures. Advise government to fully incorporate the ICT VCG platform. This is the electronic platform in AMIS, and the coverage to increase to at least 15 districts. I think this was at the end of the project, this was the thinking under CIVAP. And we hope this thing will not just gather dust, but should be put to use. Then the finance department in the agriculture will mobilize resources for diagnostic study and also identify co-financing options for special agro-industrial zone, industrial processing zone to ensure that the SPCZ is prioritized in the next CSP. On this one, I think my colleague will make a full presentation to explain to you what the special agro processing in the industrial processing zone is all about. Then the recommendation engage in the knowledge work and the policy dialogue is one of the recommendation, and under this one, the one was to share the findings of the evaluation with government, DPs, and other stakeholders. And this is the first meeting which we are conducting now to share with the government, and then ensure that the outcomes of the land policy brief, gender profile study, and irrigation impact evaluation inform the CSP midterm review of 2020 and also future operations in the sector. That is by the time we reach 2023. Then conduct a child nutrition and health study, which actually I indicated earlier on. Now, yeah, I thought I was going to miss this one. What should be done to previous bank finance projects? This is a discussion point. I'm just raising questions. I think you, as the government and the bank, we need to do something. What are the government's plans for the unutilized market and the infrastructures like market depots, market centers, and community storage facilities under scheme? I've given an example in Blackadea and Ausik market. Everybody knows when it goes to Blantyre via Zomba, you see a beautiful market that is actually not put to use. And then agro-processing facility, for example, the one at Impinga I mentioned, which is still a beautiful structure put in place, but not being utilized. And then underutilization of irrigation infrastructures. I think these are some of the questions. What are we thinking about this? Do we just abandon? Are we aware of the investments that the government has done in those places and the deprivation of the benefits for the communities that were intended in those projects? I think we need to look into those issues. I just quoted as an example, under ASP, only 2 of the 6 schemes were functional at the time of this study. And the rest, Nyampembere, Kambenje, Chumutu, and Jagumukire, they were not functional. The 2 which were functioning, my colleague mentioned, is Mulambe and I think Msongoro should be somewhere. Mulambe and Blantyre, another one, Msongoro should be somewhere in the north. Then we also need to look at quality at exit. What support is given to the established farm organization prior to closure and after closure? Do we conduct an audit of all the infrastructures developed prior to closure, so that all if defects on the irrigation systems are addressed before closure. If you read the report, evaluation report, you will note that the beneficiaries, most of them are complaining that they were left with an infrastructure that is has full of defects, and water is not available for them to use. That's one of the reasons why it's not being used, over and above the leadership issues, the weak farm organization issues, and the other social attributes to this issue. To what extent do we build the capacity of the farm institutions to be able to maintain the infrastructure developed on their own? I think my colleague mentioned about dependency on inputs and maintenance, and I think it's a big subject. We talk about these revolving funds. Are they working? So these are the questions I think which we should be thinking about as we move on. I have highlighted a quotation here, which is from the report, and we need to think seriously about it. Let me point out one key informant saying, let me point out that what I noted was that for SCIMP, much of the time was spent on the trainings, which is like the software part instead of the infrastructures. I'm saying this because most of the projects under SCIMP were not completed. In other districts, these projects were, sorry, I think somewhere I'm obstructed. Very additional and silver, but DOA as a district did not benefit from this. I think in some other processes, the projects were ended up well, and then some people benefited. But the question is, more time was spent on trainings. That's the software part, and saying little was done on infrastructure. We need to further revisit on how the resource allocation is done, and also during implementation, how do we prioritize our implementation areas. I just have some tips. One is we have learned from this project, and then we have done something in some projects, but we still need to do more. And I suggest that we introduce some of the changes to the MTR for the current projects, taking into account the findings from this evaluation. Allocate some resources for the coming operation to rectify the design flaws and farm organizations to enhance the utilization of the unused infrastructures. If we have any operation, we have to make sure that possibly we consider allocating some resources to this effect. Use part of the resources for the preparation of the next operation, including feasibility studies, preparation of designs and tender documents. I think normally we do not plan very much ahead. It's this year, let's have this project, and we rush down the ground, quickly prepare a project, and then there we are. And then we end up having all things. Can we take our time to use the resources, part of the resources of the new operations, and then we allocate? For example, I put here the special agro-processing zone, which my colleague will talk about. We could possibly take part of the resources from the upcoming projects and then use it to prepare such an investment. Also, we have the facility of PPF, this project preparatory facility, that can enable us to make detailed preparation for any future project, which is rarely utilized by the government. I think it was only utilized for the establishing agricultural cooperative bank, which of course we did not see it as it was planned, but another intervention came out of that. Then we look at quality at exit. Should commence a year before the closing date, and government should fully own the project after closure, with specific officers designated to continue supporting project activities. For example, I'll give an example under CVAP. These are it's a well thought concept, and the infrastructures are established on the ground. But you note that even recommendation at the end was, can an officer be designated agribusiness officer to be with these farmers, to support them until they can fully stand on their own. But I don't think that arrangement has been put in place. So the issue of we are done away with this, let's move on again. I think we are actually punishing the beneficiaries very much. I've put DOI versus agriculture. I think I mentioned in one of my presentations where sometimes we need to critically think through about the complementarity of these institutions other than conflicting. Participation of the social sector experts in order to ensure that the gender, land, environment, and safeguards and climate change are adequately mainstreamed in the project. In conclusion, I'm saying we need to have adequate time should be allocated to the studies to prepare the projects. The project design should consider all the aspects of market access and linkages to ensure maximum benefits from the infrastructure. Farm organizations should be considered as commercial organizations. Let's start thinking the way the Shire Valley Transformation Program is structured, focus on business objectives instead of just food security. Social concerns of the project, such as land tenure, gender, community participation, land consolidation, legal rights to water. I think in nutrition, I should have included on this one, HIV/AIDS, and then land should be thoroughly addressed during the project preparation. Sorry, abruptly my screen disappeared, but fortunately this was right at the end. So Lucia, thanks very much for your for the participation and facilitation, and I hand over to you for the next session. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Vinda. I think that was very enlightening in terms of the build-on effect of previous projects and how current projects can utilize and capitalize on unused infrastructure from previous projects. And as we look at planning and designing new projects, it's really about harnessing what we currently have, what we have invested in as government through bank support, because these are borrowings as a country. We surely cannot afford to abandon what has been borrowed on and what has been invested on. I think the key issues that keep resounding: capacity, governance, access to finance, access to markets, social dimensions, unutilized infrastructure. So I think as we then come to the point of discussion and opening it out for conversations and inputs, we'll come back to those issues. I know some had put their hands up. We have one more presentation that's coming up. It will just take 12 to 15 minutes, and then we'll open it up for the floor. Thank you. So at this juncture, we would like to invite our next presenter, Mr. Chukuma Ezedna, who will speak as regards towards better irrigation infrastructure and effective farmer schemes. What works, what doesn't, and why, agro-processing, marketing perspectives. So over to you, Chuma, to share with us for the next 15 minutes, insights in terms of possibilities and future directions. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucia. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to be speaking on special agro-industrial processing zones as one of the things that the bank is currently working on, and we're doing that in several countries. But also I'm going to talk about it in terms of how we can use that to maximize the benefits from irrigation and also marketing infrastructure. So this is the outline of my presentation. And so what are special agro-industrial processing zones? The bank currently, special agro-industrial processing zones is a flagship of the Feed Africa strategy. And it was basically introduced by the current president within the bank to be to enable Africa reduce its food imports, because the food imports in Africa is becoming unsustainable. They are basically spatial development initiatives that are designed to concentrate agro-processing activities within areas of high agricultural potential. with a view to boost productivity and integrate production, processing, and marketing of selected commodities. Now, these initiatives may not necessarily be granted a special economic zone status. One point I want to make is that in this new era of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, the special agro-industrial processing zones is likely to become the building blocks for that initiative. Because also there are shared facilities that will enable producers, processors, and aggregators and distributors to reduce transaction costs, share business development services, increase productivity and trade, competitiveness in trade. And it also, what the bank normally does is to bring this economic infrastructure, water, energy, roads to rural areas of high agricultural potential to attract private sector investments in agro-industrial development. And this is basically the concept. What is important to observe in this concept is the fact that the key actors are government, who enables the process, and the private sector that provides the finance, technology, creates the employment. But the government, of course, provides the regulatory environment, must have a key agency championing the process and coordinates the activities of intergovernmental agencies. And so the general idea here is to improve competitiveness, as well as provide jobs, and at the same time, increase investments. So basically, the special agro-industrial processing zones is a government-enabled private enabled process, but it is usually private sector-led. I'm going to discuss this process in later. And what are we trying to do with achieve with special agro-industrial processing zones? Like I said, increase food production capacity, increase value addition, create jobs, promote investment in agribusiness, and I keep saying that you cannot create jobs without investments, provide local, regional, and international trade, promote that, increase the contribution of agriculture to the GDP, and bring basic infrastructure to rural areas. Basically, what we're trying to do with this concept is actually to bring the farmer, align the farmer with the private sector interests. And to do that, we require coordination between the Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Industry, Finance, and so on one side to ensure that the farmers are able to produce enough surplus for industrial use. But industrial management, the park management is usually left in the hands of the private sector, who will then take it on from there and do all the logistics in terms of distribution and agro-logistics and exports. Now, coming specifically back to Malawi, it is important to understand that the irrigation infrastructure is critical in enabling consistent supply of agricultural raw material. This, combined with agro-production inputs, is very critical when it comes to actually obtaining the marketable surplus that is required for industrial processing. And we believe that the special agro-industrial processing zone will enable the use of existing and future irrigation schemes, which are critical, like I said, for agro-industrialization. The special agro-industrial processing zones also provides a guaranteed market for farmers. Once it is possible to increase productivity, you should also be able to take a demand-driven approach to ensure that the market is available, which means you need to bring in the private sector to ensure the export competitiveness of the sector and or provide the import substitution that is required to save the country from importing commodities. We also believe that the existing market infrastructure may be good building blocks if Malawi decides to take on the special agro-industrial processing zone. As Vinda had mentioned, it is imperative that we do comprehensive assessment of the institutional framework but will also require some kind of project preparatory funds to do full feasibility studies and master plans and environmental and social impact assessments, and also look at the resettlement action plans. These will require some funding and detailed planning from the very beginning before we even begin to engage in the whole process and cycle of a bank when it comes to preparation of a project of this nature. Now, how does this look? The special agro-industrial processing zones, if you look at the diagram, is basically a specific area. In the center of this area is the agro-industrial processing zone. Now, within a 30-kilometer radius could be the catchment area in which agricultural produce can be obtained. So the agro-industrial processing hub is designed in such a way that it concentrates processing activities within an area of agricultural potential, which I have mentioned before. And location is critical. It must have certain advantages, and those advantages are listed: access to large agricultural production, labor, trade markets, external transport infrastructure, and so on. This is a configuration of what we call the special agro-industrial processing zone. It consists of an agro-industrial processing hub, which is located here, an agricultural transformation center, which actually the agricultural marketing infrastructure already have in existence in Malawi could also serve as that, and aggregation centers at the farm level, as you can see in the diagram. The way it is designed in phases, but it is also designed in such a way that it must include both small processors, microprocessors, large-scale processors, medium-sized processors. In plots, the hub is plotted in such a way that the sites and services, in a sites and service mode, in which every plot has a full facility to plug onto. It is also possible to design it in such a way that it could also have social infrastructure, meaning sports facilities, housing facilities, and so on. But the most important thing to note here is that the phased development approach enables resources that are gained from the phase development. Those resources can then be used to design and develop the second and the third phases in terms of income that is accumulated from the first phase. This is how it looks from an aerial view. Now, where have we been doing this? We are almost in 20 countries in Africa as we speak, but at various levels of development. We have, as I speak, special agro-industrial processes of investments in Mali, Guinea, Senegal under implementation, Togo, and Ethiopia. Actually, in Ethiopia, we have 4 agro-industrial processing zones going on at the same time. I'm highlighting the SNNP region, which is in one of the regions in Ethiopia, where we already have beginning to record some success stories, which I'll share in a later slide. Under design, we have Nigeria, which is currently working on 6 zones, Cote d'Ivoire, Liberia, and several other countries in Africa. And then, of course, we are doing some business development support for some countries like Kenya, Ghana. In fact, Ghana may be in an advanced stage now and may be moving under design, and Sierra Leone and Mauritius. Just to give you an idea of where in Africa the bank is currently working on special agro-industrial processing zones. Now, this is the slide I'm talking about in terms of the one of the parks in the SNNPP region in Ethiopia. Currently, that just one factory that is located in that park has already provided 73,000 farmers direct benefits in terms of the fact that that factory, which is an avocado oil processing plant, has engaged these farmers to supply them with avocado That particular factory employs 350 permanent staff. And as I speak, there are a lot more factories that are coming on stream into that industrial park from China and from Italy. And then, of course, the park itself currently has provided over 14,000 permanent and temporary jobs. This is information I just received just 2 months ago or 3 months ago. Just to give you an idea of how bringing in investments from the private sector can enable farmers get more efficient in their processing and their production, and at the same time provide a market for their commodities. Now, moving forward, we would like to know whether government sees this opportunity, sees the opportunity of establishing special agro-industrial processing zones as a necessity, given previous and current project experiences. And I would like to know, how do we utilize, this is a question that has already been asked by Vinda, how do we utilize some of the existing infrastructure to be able to build on the special agro-industrial processing zones, given that the direction of the continent now is to have a free trade zone, and we need to also abide by the rules of the trade, which means that we also have to have better infrastructure in terms of processing to be able to meet the standards that is required in the Africa Free Trade Agreement. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chuma, for sharing with us that insightful presentation, showing perspectives in terms of possibilities, future direction when it comes to agro-processing. So there we are in terms of the results of the evaluation of projects that the government has invested in and borrowed for, as regards how are we doing enhancing agricultural productivity and incomes for our people. And then in terms of the issues that are already emerging, the issues that we need to reflect and ask ourselves, how do we capitalize on the current investments to be able to move into the future? And as regards future investments, future project designs, and the presentation that has just been shared gives us insights in terms of some of the possibilities as regards those investments. So at this point, we would like to open it up to the floor and invite questions, points of clarification, and also us zoning in to answer some of the questions that have been posed by our presenters in terms of what are the opportunities that we see. How do we utilize existing infrastructure from previous projects with our current and our future project designs? So I'd like to open it up to the floor. You may raise your hand and then we'll unmute you so that you can present your questions. Thank you. We open the floor for discussions. Any questions or clarifications from the earlier presentations, and also to answer some of the questions that have been posed. Yes, please go ahead. Mr. Mamba.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Lucy, for hosting this webinar. It's very educative. Looking back at the schemes that the department within the Ministry of Agriculture has been implementing on the SKIMP and ASP. First, let me just digress a little bit, and this is to give an apology on behalf of the PS. The change in the times of hosting this meeting has clashed with his medical appointment, so he has had to leave. but he has left a word that the documents that have been presented, it would be good if they were shared with his office for his convenience also. Having said that, I would like to inform you that as a department, we participated fully in the impact evaluation. We started with the late Professor Ephraim Chirwa, may his soul rest in peace, and then we finished with Dr. Levison Chiwaula. Most of the things that have been stated, they are now becoming obvious to us, because even in our departmental review meetings, most of these issues are coming up, and what is needed on our part is action. Now, regarding preparedness, I would like to say that from the appraisal point of view, when the bank comes to appraise projects, I would just like to appeal that we should be together in terms of realistic costing of the various components of an irrigation scheme, for instance. There have been quite a number of instances where the bank insists that this is the real cost of investment in a particular country. And it turns out at the implementation stage that these were lower rates that were estimated. So it's important that when the appraisal missions come, we are together to be as realistic as possible to take on board what the market demands are. Secondly, we have improved in terms of project preparation. We are insisting that we should have adequate time for the pre-feasibility, feasibility, and detailed design stage before we actually get to implementation. We have also improved in the sense that just right now, we are having a technical assistant supported by the European Union, whereby we are looking again at the capacity of our farmers in sustaining the investments that have been there. What we have come to realize is it appears there's just a short time of capacity building within the project implementation period for our farmers. We are transforming farmers from subsistence to become more or less commercially oriented. And the time that is allocated, which is the project time frame, usually is not adequate. And the example which has also been said by the EU that they have provided a technical assistant to come again to build the capacity of the farmers in terms of their agribusiness skills, in terms of water management and so on and so forth is good. So as we design future projects, yes, we really have to look at the governance issues, the water use association and cooperatives, whether the time that is set for them to transform is adequate. On women empowerment, and this is on the gender issue, I think the finding is quite an interesting one, that the women folk, they make less money, but they are able to improve in terms of the welfare at household level. There's nothing stated of what the male folks do with the money when they have made more profits. They have increased the productivity, but it's silent on what the men do with the money that they get. I've also, we as a department, we are also improving in terms of preparation of our designs, the detailed designs. We are now, time and again, constituting what we are calling internal design reviews, where a team of engineers, and including those in environment and those that provide social services, come together to look at the designs that are coming from the consultants, review and provide specific comments to the consultants. And we are also appealing time and again to our district irrigation officers that they should take on board the guidelines which have been given within our irrigation code of practice. We have an irrigation code of practice now, and this guides irrigation officers on how irrigation business should be conducted. The last presentation, which has been made by Chikuma, is an interesting one. As has been mentioned time and again by Vinda, that we're implementing the Shire Valley Transformation Program, which is also financed by the bank. The special agro-industrial processing zones. This is quite an interesting one, and I know that members of the project management team who are within this webinar are going to take those lessons on board, because we have been thinking around this subject matter of having agro-processing zones. But I think the bank may assist us to deepen our knowledge further in terms of how we can have this functioning within the Shire Valley Transformation Program. And we are talking of the year 2023 going forward. So yes, in a nutshell, I would like to say that the findings of this impact evaluation has not surprised us much, because we have been part and parcel of the process. But it has also been enriching in terms of the lessons that have been brought up by Vinda and Chikuma regarding how we can move forward. So thank you very much. Let me stop here to give chance to my colleagues. Thank you so much, Lucy.
All right, thank you so much for that intervention, Mr. Mamba. So it's about how we prepare and appraise for us to determine the overall outcomes. I'll open it up to other contributions. Any points of clarification, comments, how we move forward, how we answer some of the issues that have been posed. The floor is open. Feel free to raise your hand or unmute yourself.
Lucia, maybe may I come until the next person raises his or her hand?
Yes, please go ahead as we check for other contributors.
Dr. Mamba, for important points that you have raised. We're happy to hear your reaction. And thank you very much for being part of the evaluation team. It's really wonderful to work hand in hand. That's why, you know, the findings is not surprising you. In coordination. Following presentation, Vindas and Chuma's presentation, more forward-looking. What do we do now? I think in your, Dr. Mamba, you've raised about the need for the bank to work with you closely in project preparation appraisal. That's a very important thing, and that's what we believe we're doing. But if that has not been adequate in the past, but this is an area that we will have to consult. Actually, this appraisal should have been done by you, but we are providing you support. You are the owner of these resources. We're here to support you. We're here to implement, the Government of Malawi development strategy. So the consultation should not start. I always say that we are on the ground. We are in the long way to be very close to you, to dialogue, to prepare. Even now, we have following our CSP and Mr. Renew in September. Government has identified the agricultural commercialization and agribusiness, particularly to enhance the youth employment in the sector as an area of support for 2020. We're talking about $20 million US. We have the resources, but even the lessons, the points that have been raised in Germa's presentation, these are not new. We have been, doing number of PCRs. We know the issue of sustainability. We know the issue of capacity, even about the issue of the land, tenure. We know, the need to have feasibility study before we jump into the actual intervention. But it is a matter of implementing the lessons that we have learned. So we do have now the opportunity for this, agriculture commercialization, which we can capture some of the, the recommendations made by Vinda, as well as the recommendation made by Chuma, especially on establishing of the special, agro-industrial processing zone. It's also in line with the, with the government thinking. The Minister of Finance has raised it during our CSP, mission in September. So we have the opportunity, and it's important that we work closely. Vinda is also on the ground, and with other key members. It would be good also from you to get, even prior to the the preparation mission or appraisal mission, to get also like a concept kind of like note your ideas. What are you planning? Have you taken stock? Vinda has highlighted, if we've seen some of the photos that he has presented or the pictures. We have market depots, irrigation schemes that are underutilized, the agro-processing unit. Sometimes it's not about getting new things, but are we using, or are we, fully utilizing the infrastructures that, millions of dollars have been invested on? Are they fully impactful? So these are also, I think it's important as the ministry, as a government, to take stock. And we want to hear from you, as you are the leader, as you are the owner. When we design now the next operation 2020, which should actually, this is also part of that design, yeah? We're already discussing about it. We know the gap areas, we know what should be captured even with that intervention that's coming in 2020. So we will need to take stock. Some of them, they don't really require a lot of money, but they need to be captured, whether by us, whether by government, or whether by other donors. But it's important from government side to have even the full list of facilities that are not fully utilized. Again, the issue of sustainability, it's not only for agriculture sector, but for the number of sectors that we have. We have expensive facilities, but in terms of their sustainability, we've supported the fishery industries over 10 years ago. Now, when we were doing some assessment, we have seen some cold store that have been blocked and are not utilized. I'm just giving you an example. So since the Ministry of Finance is also connected in this webinar, I would want to, we've talked about, a number of these issues. They are not new, but I like what Dr. Mamba said. It is about taking action. Until we, we change, or we put this thing into action, we may talk about them 5 years later. So we do have a good opportunity to, the agriculture commercialization, agribusiness operation, $20 million or so. And it just requires smart programming and also picking up, the small elements, the gender aspect, the land tenure. We don't want to be all over the place, but it is more of like, programming in a smart way. We've learned the example of other countries, and we would also be very happy, Chuma and his team. That's why we're here, in terms of to have another agro-processing zone, lessons from the countries that have, a bit ahead of Malawi. And so we will be very happy, but I just want to say that's why we are here on the ground in Lilongwe, to have that close collaboration with you. So, so to change the storyline, we've done so many things, but the impact is not as fast or as, it has to reach, as far, the people, millions of people that, that depend on number of this, these facilities. So I just wanted to intervene here, and thank you, Lucia. Let's see if there are other hands. But so this is knowledge sharing. So please, colleagues, invited guests, we would be very happy to hear from you and share your experience. And yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Jerusalem, in terms of posing some of the key issues based from experience with other initiatives and how government can consider and think of how we can capitalize on some of the existing infrastructure that's underutilized in future project programming. I'm not seeing any new hands, but perhaps we'll pose more specific questions because they are different representatives from the different departments under the ministry concerned as regards some of these projects that have been evaluated. So maybe coming.
Lucia, there's a hand from Tinko.
All right, thank you for that. So we'll come back to some of the issues that were being posed during the presentations, but let's give opportunity to those that have now raised their hands. So let me give an opportunity to Tinko, and then we'll also allow Mr. Anderson Mbozi to also come in. So over to you and Tinko.
Thank you so much, Dr. Luce. I've been following the presentations and just wanted out of interest to learn if at all the study also tackled an issue of mindset change. There are instances whereby an irrigation scheme, they might have resources for operation and maintenance, but still they don't have that feeling that they can maintain the irrigation infrastructure on their own. Did you look into that area as well? Thank you.
All right, the question is noted. Let us allow Anderson Mbozi to also pose his contribution, and then we'll allow the panelists to respond before we move on to the next person. Over to you, Anderson Mbozi.
Yeah, thank you very much for nice presentations. I think we have learned a lot on the documentation of achievement, challenges, and the lessons on the ground. I have one issue, I think maybe two, which I would like to put forward to the team. The issue of the current trend in irrigation development. I think as a bank, we should be aware that I think there is a current shift in terms of the target area. I think now we are moving from the small scale to relatively large scale schemes. If you look at the area that we are developing, I think if you go through our database as your database as AfDB, you may see a trend in change if you compare horticulture, scheme, sheep, CVAP. I think based on our policy, I think the current trend has been a shift in terms of the area that we are developing, in terms of the type of facility that we are putting on the ground. So maybe I wanted to appreciate if there was an elaborate, maybe there was a deliberate effort to compare the performance of these two schemes, specifically for the large scale schemes and the small scale schemes. And maybe the other one that maybe sometimes we tend to try to address the issue of targeting. I think it's also relatively similar to what Tink was raised, similar to mindset issues. I think sometimes we have had maybe schemes that maybe if you go through our country, there are some districts where it's problematic to have schemes functional. And I wanted to see whether the consultant had gone further to investigate. For sure, if you go through the country now, you may see that there are some areas where if you invest there, the likelihood of the irrigation to be utilized to 100% or 80% is so high. While we have some areas where sometimes when you intend to invest in such area, we have to do a lot of work, and sometimes the risk of underutilization tend to be a bit higher. But I would like to see if there was that deliberate effort to compare the uptake and also the level of acceptance of the irrigation investment without regarding the irrigation potential of those areas. And the other point is just maybe for correction. I think Vinda can agree with me. I think the total number of schemes that were developed under ISP, I think it's not 6. To my knowledge, I think we developed a lot of schemes. I think relatively, I think close to 10. And those which are not working are the ones that were developed under the small scale solar schemes along the Shire Valley. And these were damaged by the Hurricane Idai. And I think it's now that we are trying to mobilize resources to do some design changes, building issue of climate resilient and the disaster proofing, so that we don't have a similar scenario where we have most of our investment maybe being damaged. But I think it should be a point of correction that under AISP, I think the schemes were not 6. To my knowledge, I think we had in Tengula, in Neno, Mlambe, in Blanta, I said we had Kambenje, Namaloa, Bwanje, and I think those other schemes. So maybe for just collection, because this is a permanent record, we need to put those things into true perspective. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for those 2 contributions. I think we'll allow the panelists to respond on the issue of ownership mindset for those beneficiaries in managing the schemes, and comparisons as regards small and large scale. I think let's open it up for our panelists to respond to these 2 quick questions.
Okay, Chair Lucia, can I come in?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, about particularly on the mindset of the farmer. Yeah, this is one of the, of course, the factor we look at it is it is a root cause. It is the causes or the factors that explain why the schemes are underutilized, particularly. Yeah, because this is so we measured the impact on the outcome indicator we presented now in terms of productivity and on higher level terms of food security and poverty. These are the impact, but what are the root causes that can reduce, for example, for lack of impact on crop intensity and other lack of impact. So mindset is one of the factors that we identified here. As I said, it is one of the factors that really reduces the sustainability of the schemes in general. So during our focal group discussion and the key informant interviews, this came out really as the key. They call it dependency syndrome, I think, in the area as they discussed. So as an example, I can mention in Felombe, there is a scheme which is, the water is there and so on. But, when the scheme was commissioned for the first time, because the government provided a subsidy to the inputs, for example, for the fertilizers and the seed and so on, all the farmer participates and they, I think, utilized 100% of the land under the scheme. But as the years goes on and the government withdraws the subsidies, where the farmer has to take into their own hand, then the rate of utilization of the scheme goes down around 70 instead of 100. So this is basically due to the mindset now, and Tinko mentioned, and as well as Anderson mentioned, it's really as you know very well, it's really the key factor, how we can motivate the farmers to utilize, because there is a question actually, how the farmer cannot use his own available resources to maintain or to buy inputs. If there are farmers who have adequate enough to do that, to buy the input and also to contribute for maintenance, but when it comes to the motivation, there really is a challenging factor. So this is one of the issues where we should work actually as under building the organizational capacities, particularly with the farmer association, and also the water user association, to really develop the right behavior toward using the irrigation schemes. So if we work with this association and build the character, the mindset, everything, it will help them. The other, the reason I'm mentioning about the institutional issue is that, so if the institution has the right procedures, process in place, and then able to enforce, its members to abide by those rules and regulation, it's easier to, at least to some extent, manage this mindset. That's where we have to work more on legalizing, water user association and so on. All this will help to really guide the members and develop the right attitude. Thank you very much. Back to you, Chair.
All right, thank you so much, Germa. I think there was also indications from Dr. Mamba. We are trying to commercialize agriculture from subsistence to small scale and to large scale. Therein also, from my own experiences in agriculture, is also the crux. Who are we targeting within these irrigation schemes? As we try to also have broad-based economic development in Malawi. So we'll open, there are other people who would like to also contribute. Chuma, I will allow you to come in, and then there's also Maurice Kakuwila, because this is really a platform for you as government in terms of the issues that have been presented. So over to you, Chuma, and then we'll move on to Maurice Makuwila.
All right, thank you, Lucia. I just wanted to latch on to the comment that was made by Dr. Mamba. If we have to think of 2023 for the SAPC development, we have to start preparing now. But one point I want to make, having said that, is to think specifically in relationship to coordination within the ministries and departments of government. Coordination in the sense that we also have to know what is going on in other ministries. As I was preparing this report for presentation, I got a call that there is some work already ongoing in respect of preparations for an agro-industrial zone for Malawi. And either through the Ministry of Finance or through the Ministry of Industry. Why this is important is to look into the coordination, look into the issue of coordination to ensure that these facilities that we are talking about that are lying in waste are included in the initial design and how that can be done and whether it will be of any advantage to do so. Now, if there is any need for the bank to support, it will also be good to dig in and find out what is going on at the moment so that we as a bank can also latch on to support the process. I just want to throw this in because coordination is critical at this point. It is not only the Ministry of Agriculture when it comes to agro-industrial processing zones that are the most important. There are also other related issues on incentives, on regulations, which may not necessarily fall under the Ministry of Agriculture, but the production aspects are core agricultural issues, but then they have to meet the market requirements, and that's why you need the other departments or other ministries to support instead of reinventing the wheel. I just want to throw that in now. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Chuma. Vinda, you wanted to come in response to some of the earlier questions, and then we'll come to Maurice.
Okay, thanks very much for the comments from the questions raised. I think what I want to talk about is the mindset on operation and the maintenance. To me, the issue is a bit deeper than that, because for them to be capacitated to do the operation and the maintenance, I think there are certain underlying issues that need to be addressed. And these are actually the issues which have ended up having the farmers which are not ready to actually maintain their own structures. So the subject matter is questionable because the issues identified from this study, like the weak farmer organization, if we don't have a well-organized group, it will also be difficult to mobilize resources for the operation and maintenance. The issue of choice of technologies. If the maize-based syndrome is to go by, then indeed they will not be able to mobilize themselves for operation and maintenance. And then the aspect of business orientation. If they do not have the ideas on how they can use this investment they have in terms of generating business, having more income from which a percentage or so can be put aside for maintenance, I think that such type of plans are what are needed in those areas. And then the issue of addressing the market access. So you find that when you talk to the farmer, these are the challenges. They'll be told, no, there's no market. Now, okay, they cannot do any business. And then where do they get the money to do the maintenance? Because some of the maintenance aspects we talk about, which are always come back to the government for rehabilitation, some of them can be maintained by them if we have a very viable group and very good leadership, which are the issues which have been raised in this study. And then the business orientation aspect, producing for business, producing for market, and not just producing for consumption. So these are some of the issues. If you look into the detail in the report, they will even indicate that the amount of money that they were contributing, they were minimal. And then there were also issues of some leaders running away with money, financial accountability. All these aspects have to be fully addressed if we are to achieve this issue of self-sustaining operation and maintenance, and kill the word dependency syndrome. The other issue about the trend of moving from small to large, and was there any comparison? I think there wasn't such a comparison, because the study was actually to compare on the beneficiaries within the two sampled projects, SKIMP and the AISP. So that one I think was not there, but it's good. The direction we are taking is good, only that it also comes along as we move from small to large. Then we should also prepare ourselves for challenges relating to the land consolidation. Because when you want to do bigger, it means you need to have so many farmers consolidate land into one big block. And then that also brings in the land tenure issues. Or what is needed is during preparation, there's need for a thorough analysis of the land tenure issue, the participation by the communities, and all other socio-economic issues which might actually undermine the implementation of a larger scheme. But that is the way to go, and that is even the bank's stand. We no longer need those 5-hectare irrigation schemes. In terms of targeting the sites for irrigation, I think there's an indication that some areas the people are very difficult to work with. It is a challenging issue raised by Mr. Ngozi. I know in mind he has a quota. I didn't just want to mention. So the issue, some districts can really be difficult. But what I would say is, we would rather, the area has technically proved to be potential. And then we have the people being difficult. So the issue is, how do we address the subject of the people being difficult? So this starts all the way from in the project cycle, from identification. During project identification, I think they need to have with thorough discussions, stakeholder consultations, and come up to concrete agreements in terms of how the project will be implemented, because some of them resist because of the fear of the unknown. So we have to remove that unknown and make it known so that they should also accept the agenda. If we say because they are difficult, then we just leave it out and only go to where people are ready. This may not be politically correct. And you can agree with me, but this is why, if anything, when we are developing IAP, I would have been the first person to say, let us not go to Botagota because of what we experienced before. But then the question is, are we saying that the people of that area shall perpetually be denied development? Is it an issue that we cannot address? Can we find a way of addressing these people and convince them to be part of the game? The last point I wanted to comment was the irrigation scheme, 6 irrigation schemes under AISP. 6 irrigation schemes does not mean that there were 6 for the project. These were the sampled schemes under the study. So out of the sampled schemes under the study, only 2 were functional. Thank you very much. These are the comments. Maybe the last one, sorry, from the director, the director member. He expressed interest in the SPZ. And I know also they have already raised within the bank that the potential area to start thinking about this is the Shire Valley Transformation Program. And I know Dr. Kaira is with us here, who has a fair understanding on the next steps after the irrigation investments. But we cannot wait until the irrigation investment is done. We need to start preparing so that the irrigation construction finishes. Then these aspects of market, crop development, and what should also have already commenced. So maybe to my colleague Chuma, it's important maybe if we can share, in addition to the presentation, a detailed concept note to the Department of to the Ministry of Agriculture and the Department of Irrigation, so that we can start teasing around on how we go about it. Thank you very much. I think these are the comments I wanted to make.
All right, thank you, Vinda. That brings us to top of the hour at 12 noon. However, we'll just allow for some 5-6 minutes so that we can wrap up our session. There are 2 questions that have not been responded to that would like to hear from government itself. All the deliberations have been touching on enhancing capacity, selection of beneficiaries, but there were 2 issues that were highlighted in the presentations that need input from government. What are the plans for utilizing the infrastructure that is lying idle, the white elephants, and should they be white elephants? So the unutilized irrigation infrastructure, unutilized market infrastructure. What are the plans in that regard? This is a question to government. And the other one was, what are the reasons for the flaws in the designs that have been encountered in various projects? So I'd like to pose those 2 questions so that at least we can have input and contribution from government. So as we reflect on that, I'm coming back to you, Maurice. You had your hand up earlier before the panelist responded. So let me allow Maurice to come in, and then we'll allow those that will answer the 2 questions about unutilized infrastructure and the reasons for flaws in designs. You may go ahead, Maurice.
Thank you, Dr. Lucia, and thank you for the presenting, for the presenters. Thank you so much. I was very much interested on the issue to do with the intermediate outcomes and final outcomes. When you consider the intermediate outcomes, it showed that most of the outcomes were attained. There was the positive contribution that was made by the project. But I think when you come to the final outcomes, we note that there's only one, which is positive impact on food security indicators. But I think regarding the child nutrition, I think it was indicated that there was no evidence in terms of impact, as well as the undesired impact on health. I was just curious to say, was there any baseline survey that was undertaken or information to at least validate as to whether the project had impact towards the end, so that at least it could be be measured well. And as such, I saw somewhere there was no baseline data, and I was asking myself to say, was this to do with the about child nutrition and the like? So because this has got a negative rating towards the end, whereby I think when you look at the intermediate, there were high scores, but I think towards the end, I think there is a negative rating. And as such, I move on to the gender issue again. In terms of gender, there was a gender disparities, and I was saying, was there a gender action plan in the current project that we are implementing? During the appraisal, there was the development of a gender action plan which we are supposed to be following. So I'm saying probably these are lessons. Was there something like that as an instrument to manage, at least to check on progress as how we do the reporting, instead of just figures, but again in terms of impact as to how these are being utilized when you consider men and women, how much they are utilizing and the kind of benefits that is going to them. So these are some of the things. But I think just comments, two comments, final ones, are to do with the make agriculture attractive for the youth. I was very much interested with this kind of statement. I was saying in our program, the Sustainable Fisheries, Aquaculture Development and Watershed Management, we are trying to come up with incubation centers. And I was trying to say how were the two programs implemented in terms of making agriculture attractive. In our case, we want to come up with incubation centers. How could we learn from the phased out program in terms of setting up this kind of incubation centers? Otherwise, the issues to do with the siting of infrastructure is well noted to avoid underutilization of such kind of infrastructure. Thank you so much, Dr. Lucia.
All right, thank you, Maurice. There's some comments there, some observations, there's some questions. Perhaps one of the panelists to address one or two of those questions, and then we'll allow government to come in on utilizations of infrastructure and flows for designs. Either Germa or
yes,
one of you.
Yes, Lucia, Germa, can I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Yes. Thank you, Lucia. And thank you very much, Maurice, also for this interesting question, which is basically touched at the methodological aspect in terms of where is the baseline data. Yes, in this, as we indicated, there is no baseline data for the household level data collection. You know, it's when we say household level or when we say baseline data, there is two. One is baseline data, for example, for the outcome variable itself. For example, maize yield before the project and after the project. That's what. But in the impact evaluation case, when we say the baseline data, it is the all household level data that we collect at household level. For example, the number of plots, it has the farm characteristics, the household characteristics in education, demography, all these, the assets they have. All this is, we do not have baseline data on this before the project starts. So we collect this data only at the end of the project, which is, we call it the baseline data as household level. This data will help you to explain which factor has effect on this outcome. So what the comparison here is not before and after the project. The comparison here is with the project and without the project. So with the project, these are the beneficiary household, or what we call is treatment group. These are beneficiary households from the bank support who are currently benefiting from the irrigation scheme. But without these are non-beneficiaries households. They don't have the project, but they have similar characteristics to the beneficiaries, because we have to compare. We try to make as much as possible to compare, like as much as possible, apple to apple, as much to make this change using statistical and econometric techniques which are there. So we have to collect data, for example, from the beneficiary on 900 households, which are with project, and 900 household non-beneficiary, or they are without a project. So these two groups are, as much as possible, they are similar before the intervention. Both of them, they need irrigation. They have under similar characteristics because we selected them from similar agroecological zones to make the proper comparison as much as possible. So that's where we say, so the result now we see here is the average impact is a marginal impact. I mean, so when we say productivity increased by 36%, it is compared to those households who did not participate in the irrigation scheme. There is no irrigation scheme in their area, but in the future they may have. We didn't select households where there is no opportunity to irrigate, because that is not a proper comparison. We say that, okay, if there is adequate capital or finance, this community may have also in the future an irrigation scheme based on availability of water, all this. This is already identified in the irrigation master plan, which we use to make the selection with the similar household. So that's how, so the comparison is with and without a project. So that's how we did. Thank you very much. And I leave the other question to other colleagues. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Maybe at this point, if we can have an intervention from government as regards any views and insights as regards flows to designs, so that we can safeguard this for future investments. Open that for government to come in there.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Lucy. I think when I was making my submission, I alluded to the fact that one, it's important that the pre-feasibility and feasibility and detailed designs, they are done not as we implement. That was number one. Number two is that internally within the department, together with colleagues in Department of Environmental Affairs Department, and also colleagues in Extension, we are sitting down together, reviewing the designs that are coming from the consultants, and then giving appropriate guidance to the consultants. With this, it's actually helping the consultants to design something that can suit the sites that the designs are meant for. So, and I also alluded to the fact that we have with us an irrigation code of practice, which we are appealing time and again to our district irrigation officers, and indeed any official at any level, to follow what is contained in the irrigation code of practice, so that we can improve in terms of design. The fourth one, which is also most important, is that prior to maybe 2015, we didn't have registered irrigation engineers within the department. So we have raised the bar to an extent that we have involved the Malawi Board of Engineers to improve the standards of our engineers, to have them registered as professional irrigation engineers. So quite a number of irrigation officers now, they are getting registered and they are becoming professional. And they are now mindful about standards, about the quality of works, and also what should be produced by the end of the day, because this affects their professional growth. So these are the elements that we have put together to ensure that flows to designs. Of course, given the climatic changes, you cannot rule them out. There are floods and all sorts of things happening. You cannot completely rule them out, but want to minimize. So this is my submission, Dr. Lucy. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. And would there be any views or indications of how we can move forward with underutilized infrastructure in irrigation and the markets? And then we can bring our session to a wrap with the closing remarks.
Yeah, on this one, let me call upon Sumani, because he's responsible for schemes in Blantyre, and Mpezeni. And Mbozi, just to take 30 seconds, each one of you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Anderson Mbozi. As clearly stated by the director there, Engineer Mamba, the issue of underutilization as a department at the moment, I think, is something that we are dealing with, and the dimensions tend to vary depending on the direction where the issues are coming in. You may recall that most of these facilities that we are facing now, especially where we're having challenges, are the facilities where the construction coincided with the closure of the projects. In mind the market depot, you may recall this is the project that was completed construction in the final year of the project. As such, the benefit to put out measures on the utilization was not done under the project. But at the moment, there is a discussion to see how best you can utilize this facility using the available windows and other similar projects that are addressing issues of agricultural commercialization. But for the irrigation schemes, at the moment, as a ministry, we have instituted a task force involving members of different departments, extension, irrigation, planning, and the crop production, where specific plans are being developed for each and every scheme where underutilization is being registered. We have in mind the mission that has been carried out to assess the number of schemes which we are underutilizing now. And the idea is to identify the problem and be able to resolve the problem where it involves linking them to existing partners. We have in mind where in some areas the issue is just production, and we have gone ahead to make sure that the farmers there establish the producer organization and have been linked to agricultural commercialization project, because in some instances the issue has been the challenges in terms of sustenance of their production, especially when you have a scheme where the first year has performed very well, but you find that they didn't find a good market and they tend to be weak in the second year. So maybe you can be able to share a strategy that we have developed in terms of utilization of the schemes, but it's our ongoing activity that we are doing to document the investment that we have made and also to ensure that they are utilized. Okay. I think that's what I can say for now.
All right, thank you so much. And is there another contribution? And then we can move to closing remarks of the team that had been requested to intervene.
Yes, Dr. Rossi.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Apart from what Engineer Mbozi has highlighted, as a department, we have now directed all the district irrigation offices to be making the regular follow-ups for all the projects that have phased out, so that they can be checking how they are progressing, coaching them in the way so that they should really utilize these irrigation schemes to the fullest. Previously, we could leave them to be operating by themselves, but we noted that their capacities, normally, they are not up to date up until we really are sure that they can run these things on their own. So we make those deliberate efforts to make sure that these projects that are phased out, they are sustainable. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. So these are also in your practice considerations for including these kind of interventions and integrating ownership as projects are implemented way ahead of closure. So I think given the lively contributions and the engagement.
Lucia, there's one hand that has been raising for quite some time, Johnny Vutula.
Thank you. So maybe that will be our last contributor, so that we can bring our session to an end, but it doesn't mean the conversations stop here. Please go ahead. The name of the gentleman, so that perhaps we can unmute them if there are any challenges.
Is John Vutula, is in Karonga.
All right. All right, let us unmute him for him to contribute.
I can see he has lowered his hand, so I think he just wind up.
All right, so I think we're at this at the point where we would like to then conclude our webinar by calling upon our representatives from the bank as well as from the Ministry of Irrigation and Agriculture to give us their closing remarks. Mr. Vutula, do you want to come in, because we are now at moving on to the closing remarks?
Yeah. In fact, before you close, you have the closing remarks. I just want to add what Impezen has said, the chief Impezen from Nzuzu. Yeah, I remember we had the irrigation management transfer, but that we did it in a hurry. So this time I think it's right that we are still having the farmers. We are still staying with them. We are still assisting them until whereby we see that they can sustain themselves. But at the present, all the projects phased out, we are still assisting the farmers. So that is very true for sustainability of the schemes. Lastly, I have seen that the presentations are very fruitful and very, very good. Would you please ask the presenters to share with us the presentations? Thank you very much.
Yes, definitely, Mr. Vutula. Thank you for your intervention, and we're happy that throughout the structures of the ministry presentation in terms of those on the ground that can also speak to the realities that we are talking about. So if we can then invite for our closing remarks, Ms. Karen Roth-Musterman. I trust that I said that correctly. The Acting Evaluator General for IDEV. Over to you, Karen.
Yes, thank you very much, Lucy, and it's a pleasure to be here. So let me perhaps just give a bit of background. So in the IDEV work program, which is approved by the AfDB Board of Directors, we conduct 12 evaluations each year, but only one is an impact evaluation of this type, of this evaluation, because impact evaluations require specialist skills and substantial resources, because they apply, as Guillermo said, a counterfactual approach, whereby we compare the project beneficiaries with a control group to really measure the effects of the interventions. And this allows us to say with statistical significance which effects were actually due to the bank's projects and the bank's interventions rather than others. So for this evaluation, the team surveyed 1,800 households in 36 communities with another 14 sessions of key informant interviews, 10 focus group discussions, and a lot of sophisticated statistical analysis. So it was a lot of work, but it was worth it. Because as an evaluation department, we learned a great deal from the process that we can use in our future evaluations. For example, on data collection using tablets and social media. And the evaluation generated rich lessons and recommendations to maximize the impact of ongoing and future irrigation development interventions. The evaluation was much appreciated by the AfDB Board of Directors when we presented it in September. Because they really appreciate seeing the results of the bank's interventions on the ground. They care a lot about that. And so they encourage the bank to take the lessons fully on board. So that is why we are organizing a series of webinars. The first one was for bank staff, and now this one for government officials, to share the knowledge from the evaluation so that we can put the learning into practice, or to move from learning to action, as Jerusalem has also said. So that is why we came to present to you the lessons from the impact evaluation and how this knowledge is taken into account in the design and implementation of bank interventions. I think we've had a rich discussion today. What I took away, what I heard as some of the key issues for irrigation projects being capacity, governance, access to finance, access to markets, social dimensions, utilized and unutilized infrastructure, as we just heard. Also the importance of project preparation, project design, quality assurance, maintenance, and sustainability. Now, those last two, maintenance and sustainability, are an issue that we find across many of our evaluations in all sectors, like water and sanitation, transport. So it really is a challenge, I think, across the development world. So addressing these issues in ongoing and future interventions will be key for the success of these projects, including irrigation projects. And in my mind, this will require continued partnership between the AfDB and the government, coordination with other partners, and stakeholder engagement throughout the process. So I think we've had a very good session, and I wish everyone much success going forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karen. So this brings us to the closing remarks from the representatives of the Ministry of Irrigation, Agriculture and Water Development. As the Permanent Secretary has another engagement, perhaps the designated official or the director may then take on the closing remark.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Lucy, for hosting this webinar. And through you, I would like to thank the entire bank officials, the entire team of bank officials, from our own FASCA here to Vinda, to those that did the independent evaluation, Gumi and also Karen. I want also to thank colleagues from Treasury, Moses Chirwa, and colleagues who joined us from the project offices, the Shire Valley Transformation, and also the IAP. And maybe you didn't know, but you can now know that we were also joined by chief irrigation officers from almost across the country. And these have enriched the discussions that we have had today. Let me say that the results or the findings of this independent evaluation for us is just like a mirror. It provides us some kind of reflection on the activities that we are doing with support from the bank. We are happy to learn that we have achieved what we call the main objectives of our activities. The report indicates that these were achieved, but we are also mindful and want to improve on the objectives that we have not been able to achieve. Our contribution to nutrition and also the health-related issues that come with irrigation development. We have taken note of the lessons that you have provided us, and we would like to assure the bank that we'll take this on board as we move forward. Let me also indicate that within our irrigation master plan and investment framework, which runs from 2015 to 2035, we have 3 broad areas, and this is new irrigation development, so what we call sustainable irrigation development, and we have sustainable irrigation management and also capacity development. So we have seen through this report and through this evaluation that we don't seem to be doing quite fine with regard to irrigation management and also capacity development in particular. So as we move on, I think together with the bank, as we develop new projects, we ensure that these areas they are inculcated in our new projects. Let me also indicate that within the Shire Valley Transformation Program, apart from the agro-processing zones, we are also going to look at other health-related factors, including the vector-borne diseases that may come with irrigation development. And this will be done with a coordination of the College of Medicine and also another university in the UK. So there are quite a number of things that we have to do besides just the engineering part of irrigation development. Having said that, we just want to end with thanking the bank for the support that the bank continues to render to the irrigation sector in particular. We have the Shire Valley transformation. We have the agriculture infrastructure and the youth in agribusiness project, which is running. These are massive projects. As Mbozi stated and other colleagues stated, we are moving from the piecemeal kind of approach to something that is broader, which can be meaningful in terms of contribution to national development. So let me repeat that we want to thank the bank for all the support that you continue to render, and want to look forward to more support, and we'll do our part to ensure that we contribute to national development. Thank you so much, Dr. Luce, for hosting. It has been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Director Godfrey Mamba. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of this webinar. The presentations will be shared via email. Otherwise, have a good day and enjoy the rest of your engagements. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye. Good day.